Welcome back to the Solo-dolo channel, where we are on a mission to highlight the benefits and strengths of people that have chosen a solo path. I recently read an article on the website, Introvert, Dear, titled How to Deal with a Narcissist When You're an Introvert by Christine Schoenwald. Links are in the description box below. Like many of you watching this video, I wish that I would have had this knowledge before I became entangled with my non-diagnosed covert narcissistic personality disordered ex-wife, as she exhibited all 5 of the signs of a narcissist before, during, and after our marriage. Currently, I attempt to co-parent with my ex-wife and she still exhibits all of the signs. As a matter of fact, she has gotten worse over time, so I feel sorry for my teenage sons because they must endure her maladaptive behavior on a routine basis until they are old enough to legally go out on their own as grown men. Let's go through the 5 signs of a narcissist, provided by the author, and the 8 ways to deal with them as an introvert, and determine how some of them apply to my situation with my ex-wife, who we'll call Becky. Number 1. The person lacks empathy and is only sensitive when it comes to themselves. This is spot on. My ex-wife Becky was once a retail store manager. Becky had an employee that was a single mother facing temporary childcare issues that conflicted with her work availability. The employee went to Becky and asked if she could help her out by being scheduled to work on only certain days and times, until she could resolve her situation. Becky had enough employees to accommodate this request, but Becky, being the non-diagnosed narcissist, was angered because the employee had the nerve to question Becky's schedule. In what could be seen as retaliation, Becky purposefully scheduled the employee to work during the times that she could not be there. This forced the employee to repeatedly miss work. Becky used this situation to work with the regional manager to initiate an employment termination process for the employee. During the termination hearings, Becky told me that she was texting with the regional manager while the employee was pleading for their job. During the text exchange, Becky said that she, and the regional manager, both agreed that they were quote-unquote, better at life than this woman. Fast forward 8 years, Becky is now a single mother, by her choice, and her corporate position with the same company was recently eliminated. Becky was not offered any other roles to remain with the company. Now, Becky tells anyone that will listen about her struggles as a single mother as she looks for work, balances co-parenting, her financial struggles, and emotional toll it has taken on her. Number 2. Nothing is ever their responsibility, and they see themselves as victims. Shortly after Becky and I were married, I found out that she had an ongoing affair with a married man. The affair started while we were dating, persisted during our engagement, and continued while we were married. Becky's infidelity only stopped because I found undeniable evidence. When I confronted Becky, she didn't realize that I knew the entire timeline of the long-term affair. She immediately tried to become the victim, by blaming me for the affair by telling me it was my fault because I changed after we got engaged. Years later, I also found out that Becky lied to her family by telling them that I was upset with her during that time period because of our finances. Number 3. They have no boundaries and are incapable of honoring yours. Becky continually attempts to manipulate the co-parenting plan. For example, Becky contacted me 2 hours prior to our most recent regularly scheduled custodial exchange, and asked if I could meet early so that one of our sons could attend a sleepover. I said yes, I could meet her 45 minutes early, not the hour and a half she requested. The custodial exchange point is 30 minutes from each parent's home, and was agreed to in mediation. When I was 5 minutes away from meeting Becky, she texted one of our children and asked them to ask me if I could drive the additional 35 minutes and drop them off 5 minutes away from her house. This would have added an additional 1-hour round-trip travel time for me. All this without prior coordination. I said no. On the surface, this looks like a benign request, but when you're dealing with a narcissist, you can see that she was recruiting the kids to influence me to do what she wanted. Becky also attempted to violate the boundaries imposed by the parenting plan, to suit her wants and desires. This has happened so many times in the past that I can almost predict what will happen next. Becky will state that my refusal to drive the additional hour, and boundary enforcement is unwillingness on my part to be a flexible and reasonable co-parent. Number 4. They act superior because they think they're better than everyone else. In example number 1, Becky clearly showed this behavior, when she stated that she was better at life than an employee she was having fired. Number 5. They want you to share everything about yourself so they can later use it all against you. When Becky and I first met, she mined me for very personal details and data about my family life, how I grew up, deep details about my relationship troubles with my father, and so on. Fast forward 8 years to our divorce and custodial battles, Becky purposefully put painful and private details about my family relationships with my father into the court documents. The details were completely irrelevant and unrelated to any co-parenting topics. However, I quickly realized that Becky, as a non-diagnosed covert narcissist, was trying to inflict maximum pain, punishment, and air out my family's dirty laundry. Now that we know the signs of a narcissist, let's look at some of the ways to deal with them as an introvert. 8 ways to deal with narcissists as an introvert. 1. If you can't cut them out of your life, limit the amount of contact you have with them. I keep my co-parenting relationship with Becky strictly business. However, like the article stated, narcissists always have a way of coming back. Becky does everything she can to create drama, by attempting to start arguments, and gets upset when I don't take the bait, so she resorts to accusing me of not communicating. She even put into court documents that I don't get out of the car during the custody exchanges for our teenage boys. I plan on cutting Becky completely out of my life as soon as my youngest turns 18 in 5 years. Once our children are adults, we will no longer have to maintain any sort of co-parenting relationship, no more planning kids' events, parent-teacher conferences, or anything. 2. Avoid direct confrontation, as you'll only end up feeling worse than when you started. This is vital advice to anyone co-parenting with a covert narcissist. Do not take the bait. When I allow myself to get pulled into the mud with Becky, I always feel terrible on the other end. This comes in cycles and I can almost predict the next fight. I think that Becky is recharged after a long drawn-out toxic fight over nonsensical issues. I usually end up with a few nights of poor sleep, and days of overthinking the drama. This is enough to resolve to limit all communication with Becky and just walk away. 3. Don't take their behavior personally, it's never about you, yet always about them. 4. Familiarize yourself with narcissist manipulation tools and stay alert for signs of gaslighting. Another of the most well-known types of narcissistic manipulation is gaslighting, which can be devastating for the person being gaslit. Forbes Health describes gaslighting as making someone seem or feel unstable, irrational and not credible, making them feel like what they're seeing or experiencing isn't real, that they're making it up, that no one else will believe them. Gaslighting involves an imbalance of power between the abuser and the person they're gaslighting. Becky uses this tactic frequently. For example, I had to stop using a shared parenting calendar with her, and create my own version, because she would routinely change appointments, or hand off information, in her favor and without prior coordination, and then try to convince me that it was always that way. 5. Remember that you're wonderful, and continue to boost your self-esteem. 6. Instead of losing touch with people, strengthen your relationships and support systems. My ex-wife Becky launched a smear campaign before we were divorced that would make presidential campaign managers envious. About 18 months before we divorced, I could not figure out why my in-laws were suddenly acting so cold and distant towards me when we would visit. Things were seemingly okay at home between Becky and I, or so I thought. However, Becky was planning her exit, and setting herself up as the victim. She was attempting to ensure that once she filed for divorce, I would not have anyone to turn to for support. Becky even contacted my mother, and 2 adult sisters, to smear me. Thankfully, my oldest sister, who happened to be a social worker that specialized in working with personality disordered prison inmates, saw right through Becky's tactics and called her out. This, of course, caused a narcissistic injury for Becky, and my sister was then also included in Becky's smear campaign. Ironically, Becky's actions actually strengthened my relationship with my sister. 7. Strengthen your boundaries and don't accept harmful behavior from anyone. 8. Realize you'll never please them, and get better at saying no and standing up for yourself. Read the articles and let us all know what you think as it applies to your life. Thank you for watching, and if you enjoyed the video, please like, share and subscribe.